Moose Johnston for the NFL on Fox joins us. Moose, how you doing, man?
I'm great. How you doing?
I'm doing great, brother. Thanks so much. It is good to have a fellow Orange here in studio. And so I'll start there. I mean, why don't we talk about Syracuse football?
Yeah.
Well, we know that they had that big win over Clemson, but it has been a program that's been tough to try to kind of get national exposure for since probably McNabb and Dwight Freeney were there.
Yeah.
What do you think it would take to try to push them to that next level and get some top 25 votes again and get them to where it was like when you guys were there?
Just winning consistently, not having the up and downs, not having a win against Clemson. You'd lost to Middle Tennessee State on the 30th anniversary of the undefeated team from 1987. Earlier in the season, he had a big lead against Wake Forest a couple weeks after Clemson. So there's some inconsistency at the program right now, but I do believe in Dino Babers. I really do. And I had an opportunity to meet with him this past spring, and we sat down. We spent 45 minutes talking, and it was really enlightening to me because my biggest question was, how are you going to bring this style of football to Central New York and get kids to come here? The skilled athlete,
offense
exactly,
that's usually in the South or California or the Big 12.
How do you convince somebody to go to Central New York? And you got to bring them up in the wintertime. They got to see, Syracuse at its worst. So when you sit across from Dino Babers and you see the passion that he has for the game, I have all the confidence in the world that he can walk into a living room, sit down with a mom and a dad and a recruit and convince him that Syracuse is a great opportunity for him. So I believe in what he's doing. Obviously, we need to find that component of the defensive side of the ball. And I think it's one of the things that gets lost in college football today when we're playing this up-tempo, let's try and squeeze 5 quarters into 4 quarters of play. Well, what happens to your defense? You don't want – I don't like 72-63 games. I just – it doesn't make sense to me. I like 31-24. I like 21-17. So I'd like to see a little bit of focus on the defensive side of the ball, and maybe we're just a little bit too much focused on the offense.
Obviously, the story of the day is about Eli Manning. You've done so many Eli and New York Giants games over the course of your career. It's not an easy thing to sit a legend. It's not an easy thing to sit the face of your franchise, but you could make the argument that the Giants need to see what else they have behind them because they're going to have this top 5 pick. But is the problem how they handled this yesterday?
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt. I don't think anybody would have been upset if they'd have handled this the right way. And that being, we had them after the Rams game going into the 49er game. And this is when a lot of that conversation started. And the way they were talking about it at that point was, hey, listen, if we've got a game and it's not going the right way, and this happened in the Rams game, they were going to put Geno Smith in at that time. But the Rams kind of controlled the ball. They really didn't have the opportunity except in the end. When we went out to San Francisco, I fully expected to see Geno Smith inactive and Davis Webb active, or all 3 of them active. That's how I thought that this would play out down the stretch, that you would go into the game trying to win it, because at that time Ben McAdoo said Eli Manning gives us the best opportunity to win the game. I don't know what has changed from pre-San Francisco till now, but now he thinks Geno Smith gives him the best opportunity to win a game. So I have even more respect for Eli Manning, gracefully saying thank you for the opportunity to continue the streak. But if I'm not going to, if I'm going to start the game, I want to finish the game, or at least to a point where now it makes sense with a Davis Webb or Geno Smith to come in. So I just, you can't say enough for how he's handled this. It's the ugly side of the sport. There's a few of us. There's a few guys that get to ride off into the sunset. John Elway, Jerome Bettis, Michael Strahan. We've gotten to see a few of them do that, where they win Super Bowls and do that. But normally it ends kind of what we're seeing today with Eli Manning.
Moose Johnston joins us, the NFL on Fox, as we break down everything that happens in the NFL, what could happen to the NFL. When you guys were coming to the end of the Cowboys dynasty, was there any awkward situations about young players playing in place of guys that had been there before, gone to Pro Bowls, won Super Bowls?
Not really. My career came to an end prematurely because of an injury. So I didn't have to face that situation, but I'm sure it wasn't too far down the road. Michael's career ended because of injury. We exited on different circumstances. So, even Troy's, people talk about the concussions, but maybe that was the closest one where it seemed to be more, the structure moving forward from a contract standpoint. So we didn't have, that really hard decision where somebody who's been the face of the franchise, the voice of the franchise for as long as Eli has been for the Giants, that was put into a situation where the change was happening. You can see it in certain places with Alex Smith in Kansas City. Is they're talking about that now. Is it time to see Patrick Mahomes out there down the stretch to see what we have there at quarterback, to see if we're going to re-sign Alex Smith? But when we were going through everything with the Giants and the 49ers, that was also the time that San Francisco had done the Garoppolo trade. And you forget how much coaches learn and see and observe during the course of the practice week. And Kyle Shanahan said, listen, I'm not putting Jimmy out there on the field until I feel comfortable with him running our offense. And he's not there right now. And this is a pretty complex offense. I'm watching the growth at the practice field. I'm seeing what he can do on the practice field. So there's a lot you can learn there. So that's one of the other questions I have with this whole decision with Eli. You know what you have with Geno Smith because he's played in the NFL before. You have an idea of what Davis Webb can be. And if that's the direction you want to go, I think people would have been all right with that. But just the way they handled the whole thing and ending the streak, and that's a tough thing for Giants fans to accept.
Former NFL veteran, fullback, three-time champion Moose Johnston, also working alongside Liberty Tax, joining us here in studio. Speaking of your Cowboys, do you feel like their problems right now are solely injury and suspension related? In other words, losing Zeke, Tyron Smith, and Sean Lee, or is there something else that's problematic with the Cowboys? I
would say it runs a little bit deeper than that. I think they need a true dynamic number one wide receiver on the outside. I really thought Dez Bryant was going to have a great year this year. Injury plagued the last couple of seasons. Very excited. Saw him in the offseason, talked to him a couple of times, was really excited coming into this year. Looks great physically. I just don't know why, that hasn't transitioned into a good year for him. But, they don't really have that guy that scares everybody on the outside. And that's why defenses were allowed when Ezekiel was in there to just let's drop down. Let's make sure we don't get beat in the running game because we feel like we have good matchups on the outside. There's nobody out here that really scares us from a matchup standpoint. Every once in a while, Terrence Williams has popped. Every once in a while, Cole Beasley has popped. And Dez has had his moments, but not consistently. And that's been the big challenge for Dallas right now. And in the secondary, they haven't played as well. Up front, it's been inconsistent with the pressure. Sometimes it's fantastic for a couple of weeks, and then it just disappears. So there's just this really inconsistent roller coaster of performance that Dallas is on right now.
You have one of the most telling quotes in NFL films history, and so I'm going to go back a little bit. It was part of the America's game of the 1995 Dallas Cowboys. I cite this a lot when we talk about that era. And at the end of it, you said you really felt like we won the Super Bowl in spite of our coaching. And this was kind of the chaos of the Barry Switzer year and conflict after Jimmy had left Dallas. When going back on that, does that say more about the talent of your team, that you're able to kind of overcome that? Or does it suggest that if you didn't have problems with the coach, there would have been more championships after that?
Well, we all speculate if Jimmy had stayed, what potentially could have happened in Dallas. And I've heard it as far as 5 consecutive. I don't know if that's going to happen because we were also hit by the injury bug, which would have been during that 5-year.
And the 49ers were a formidable opponent.
And Green Bay was very good as well.
Yeah.
That was a great time. It was great to be a part of those rivalries. Philadelphia was great at that time. So it was a lot of fun. The statement that I made was actually something that my position coach shared with me right as we were walking off the field. And he said, I've never seen a team.
In Phoenix.
I've never seen a team do a better job of overcoming the coaching the way that your guys did.
And that came from a coach.
That came from a coach. Joe Brodsky, who's no longer with us, but was as honest as you could ever expect somebody to be.
Wow.
And that was because, don't forget, we were 1-3 in December that year.
Yeah.
We were not playing well through the month of December going into the playoffs. We had a couple of things break our way. Atlanta upset San Francisco as we're flying out to Arizona to play our final game on Christmas night against the Cardinals. If we win that game, we reestablish home field. And the way the dynamic was set up at that time, we couldn't beat San Francisco out there. San Francisco couldn't beat Green Bay, and Green Bay couldn't beat us. So by getting back home field, that meant Green Bay and San Francisco would play earlier. So the way that dynamic was working, we expected Green Bay to be able to knock off San Francisco, which they did, and come to Dallas, which we knew they wanted to win. But do you really believe you can win yet? You've got to get that first one to get that monkey off your back. So that allowed us to get to the Super Bowl. And then we had a really good first half, but we had an okay second half. Larry Brown made some plays. Neil O'Donnell made a couple of bad throws. So walking off the field, to hear that from your coach, it was more of a compliment. It really was. We were, it was the transition to Barry. The cultural change. The expectations change. From day to day. Going from Jimmy to Barry. There was just a lot of stuff going on, and there was some challenges during the course of during the tenure there. So that was a very interesting conversation I had with him.
It was a great quote, great conversation, great piece that NFL Films did. All of those America's Games are so good. So you are here on behalf of Liberty Tax, and you're here alongside the CEO of Liberty Tax, Ed Bruno, who's also in studio with us. Hello, Ed.
Good morning.
Good to be here with you guys. And so
Ed will handle all the other football questions.
Thanks a lot, Moose.
Ed, how do you think Davis Webb will do it? All right, so let's talk about tax season here because, everybody's going to start getting their returns back and start filing and whatnot. And so there's some kind of tweaks to the legislation and how you can prepare and what's implemented due to the IRS. And so what do our listeners need to know about this?
Well, the big thing is don't wait on Washington. They're not going to get this thing figured out. So, to be able to be proactive and get your game plan put in place, we're just trying to get people to be forward thinking and be a little bit proactive. And, go to libertytax.com. There's tools there. If you're a do-it-yourself type person, you'll be able to formulate your game plan from that. If not, you're going to find out where the franchise locations are in your community. And that's one of the great things about Liberty Tax is it's one of the best franchise businesses. So the people that you're going to be talking to are from your community, from your area. They're going to understand the local tax issues. They're going to be able to help you navigate the things that only people in your community would be able to do. And there's some things that were put in place last year that I was not even aware of that are going to affect people's ability to access their tax refunds from last year until at least the end of February. So Liberty Tax has created a couple of programs that will enable you to access up to $3,250 of your tax refund as early as January 2nd. So I think just to be able to speak to somebody who really understands this, because obviously this is something that's confusing to a lot of people, it just makes perfect sense to me to reach out to Liberty Tax and help them put a game plan together for you.
So, Ed, where can our listeners get to you guys and get access to the information that they need for Liberty?
Yeah, as Moose said, libertytax.com. You can go there and search. We have nearly 4,000 locations across the U.S. and Canada. I would just tell you that, similar to the discussion on football a little bit earlier, this is a very complex thing. We have thousands of tax professionals that work in each and every one of our locations. Very, very happy and excited to help folks that may have questions. And so I would say find a Liberty Tax location near your locale and go there for help.
The website is libertytax.com. Moose, you've got the playoffs coming up as well with the NFC, and I can't figure out who the favorite is. I guess the Eagles are right now. We've only got about a minute to play with here, but this is as wide open as any conference I think may have been in the last decade or so in terms of who's coming out of it.
I remember having a conversation with somebody. We got to the trade deadline in the NFL, which is usually just another day of business, and I've never seen it as active with as many high-profile names as it was this year. And somebody whose opinion I respect greatly, Rick Gosselin, who's a writer down in Dallas who writes for the NFL nationally, said there is no clear-cut team right now. Everybody feels they're one player away. Seattle needs to upgrade their offensive line. The Jay Ajayi move might have been more, hey, we're not really bolstering our running attack as we are keeping Jay Ajayi away from anybody else out there, especially the Dallas Cowboys with the Ezekiel suspension.
Yeah.
So that really kind of tells you where everybody sits this year. It's going to be wide open through the playoffs, which I think makes it fun.
It makes it a lot of fun. Moose Johnston joining us here on the show. Ed Bruno, CEO of Liberty Tax. Guys, this is a lot of fun. Thanks so much.
Yeah, good visiting. Good catching up.